The one thing, oh gosh, what's the one thing? I haven't really gotten into a book in a long time. Shocked. I'm a little bit vintage in many ways.
We go out a lot. I love it.
We need to do a purchase order of $1 million. No, this is your baby and this is your brand. I grew up clipping coupons. I grew up looking for deals. I hadn't seen pantyhose since movies in the 80s. That's why I don't look at it. I hadn't heard that.
The Duchess of Sussex just sat down for what was supposed to be her triumphant comeback interview with Bloomberg, confidently promoting her new lifestyle brand and Netflix empire. But what Meghan absolutely didn't expect was that she'd spend 90 minutes systematically destroying her own credibility with one contradiction after another. Meghan sits there claiming she's never seen pantyhose since the 80s, painting herself as this innocent California girl who was shocked by basic professional dress codes. But here's the kicker, and this is why you need to stick around until contradiction number 6, because we're going to show you exactly how someone who spent 7 years on a high-end television drama somehow forgot that costume departments exist. It's so absurd that you'll be laughing and cringing at the same time.
I think our character, who we are at your core, I don't think that shifts.
From declaring herself a vintage technology hermit while simultaneously running a digital empire, to weaving tales of childhood poverty while casually mentioning designer shopping habits, Meghan delivered contradiction after contradiction with the confidence of someone who genuinely believed no one would notice. These aren't just innocent slip-ups. These are fundamental contradictions that expose how someone constructs multiple versions of their life story depending on what narrative they're selling. We've dissected every word of this train wreck, and what we discovered will have you questioning whether anything Meghan says can be trusted. So buckle up, because we're about to witness 7 moments where Meghan Markle accidentally exposed herself as the ultimate unreliable narrator of her own life story.
I think a lot of behaviors and habits and roles that you end up playing in your life can bring out the best or worst in a lot of people, but you're still who you are.
Let's dive headfirst into what might be the most mind-boggling contradiction of this entire disaster. And trust me, that's saying something. Meghan wants us to believe she's living in some kind of vintage time capsule, completely disconnected from the modern digital world that literally everyone else inhabits.
I'm a little bit vintage in many ways because I'm from a time capsule of handwritten notes.
She's painting this romantic picture of herself as someone who's so authentically old-fashioned that she barely understands basic technology, like she's some kind of charming Luddite who writes letters with fountain pens. But wait, it gets better. She doubles down on this vintage persona, emphasizing that she's not caught up in the day-to-day tech things that most people use. She's trying so hard to sound relatable and down-to-earth, like she's above all these modern conveniences that have corrupted the rest of us. It's almost endearing in its complete absurdity.
You have to imagine Siri's not on my phone. I don't have location services.
Here's where things get absolutely ridiculous, and I mean laugh-out-loud ridiculous. This is the exact same woman who just launched a direct-to-consumer lifestyle brand that relies entirely on digital marketing, social media engagement, sophisticated e-commerce platforms, and algorithmic optimization. You literally cannot run a modern business selling luxury jam online while simultaneously claiming you're technologically challenged. The math doesn't just fail to add up, it explodes into a million contradictory pieces. Think carefully about what's actually required to build and manage a brand like As Ever. You need sophisticated inventory management systems that track stock levels in real time. You need customer relationship databases that segment buyers for targeted marketing. You need digital payment processing systems that handle international transactions. You need social media marketing campaigns that leverage hashtags, engagement metrics, and influencer partnerships. You need search engine optimization, email marketing automation, and constant online customer service management.
There are things like that I'm not caught up in the day-to-day tech things that most people are.
None of this magical business success happens with handwritten notes and stamps, no matter how vintage and authentic they might be. Yet Meghan expects us to believe she's somehow orchestrating all of this digital complexity while being completely disconnected from the technological world. She's essentially claiming to be running a Ferrari while insisting she doesn't know how to drive.
You have to imagine Siri's not on my phone. I don't have location services.
The contradiction becomes even more absurd when you realize she casually admits to using Instacart regularly for grocery shopping, so she's comfortable enough with technology to navigate complex food delivery applications, manage payment systems, coordinate delivery schedules, and communicate with shoppers through digital platforms, but she's somehow too vintage for basic smartphone features like Siri or location services. She's tech-savvy enough to optimize her online grocery shopping experience, but she's never explored ChatGPT until someone mentioned it last week. And then comes the absolute knockout punch to her own credibility. She describes her triumphant return to Instagram this year as being really intentional about using it as a platform. She talks about being strategic and purposeful with her social media presence, playing and exploring in public, and leveraging the platform to share joy and have fun.
Coming back on Instagram was a really big decision, but also It's just been joyful.
This doesn't sound like someone who's intimidated by or disconnected from technology. This sounds like someone who understands exactly how to leverage digital platforms for maximum impact, someone who's calculated the strategic value of social media presence, and someone who's comfortable navigating the complexities of algorithmic engagement.
And I'm really intentional in using it as a platform to share joy and to have fun as well.
You can't be really intentional about platform usage while simultaneously being technologically clueless. The whole charade reaches peak absurdity when she starts discussing her investment strategy and mentions being specifically interested in women, finance, healthcare, and tech. So she's investing in technology companies and evaluating tech startups, but she's supposedly too old-fashioned to understand the technology herself. She's backing innovative tech entrepreneurs while claiming she doesn't even use basic smartphone features that most teenagers mastered a decade ago. She's making financial decisions about artificial intelligence companies while pretending she just discovered ChatGPT. The cognitive dissonance is absolutely staggering, and the fact that she delivered these contradictory statements with complete confidence makes it even more entertaining to watch.
I play in public.
Now we're diving into territory where Meghan's story gets so tangled that you'll need a roadmap to follow all the contradictions. Throughout this interview, she's desperately trying to have it both ways when it comes to privacy and public life, and the mental gymnastics required to maintain this double standard are absolutely Olympic level. She wants us to believe that she's simultaneously seeking privacy while also living completely openly.
Can you actually get a drink in peace?
Yes.
Yeah.
We go out a lot. I love it.
And somehow she doesn't see how these two concepts are mutually exclusive in the most basic way possible. The setup for this contradiction starts early when she's discussing life in Montecito and whether they can actually get a drink in peace. Now, you'd expect someone who's been complaining about media intrusion and lack of privacy to talk about the challenges of going out publicly, right? Wrong. Her response immediately pushes back against any suggestion that they're trying to hide from the world or live as hermits.
We go out a lot in our community, in Montecito and in Santa Barbara.
She makes it crystal clear that they're not attempting to be incognito, that they go out constantly, and that they're living a completely normal public social life in their community. She's painting this picture of someone who's fully integrated into their local scene, comfortable being seen and recognized, and actively participating in social activities without any apparent concern about privacy or media attention. She elaborates extensively on this theme throughout the interview, describing someone who's not just occasionally venturing out, but who has a robust and active social calendar. She talks about regular girls' nights out with her friends, frequent romantic date nights with Harry because it's important for their relationship, and being visible, active participants in both their Montecito community and the broader Santa Barbara area. This is someone describing a very normal, very public social life where they're regularly seen, recognized, and apparently completely comfortable with that level of visibility.
Are there any tricks to being incognito?
No, we're not trying to be incognito.
Okay.
Different chapter.
But then comes the massive contradiction that completely undermines everything she just spent several minutes explaining. When the interviewer asks what she would do if she had total anonymity for a month, her response reveals someone who's actually deeply frustrated by the limitations of her public profile and desperately missing basic normal activities that most people take for granted.
If you had total anonymity for a month, what would you do?
Her immediate response is that she would go grocery shopping every day, explaining that she misses this mundane activity so intensely that she's been relegated to using Instacart for years. But wait a minute, let's think about this logically. If she can go out for alcoholic beverages with friends, romantic dinner dates with her husband, and regular social outings in her community without feeling the need to hide or be incognito, why is grocery shopping suddenly this impossible dream that requires total anonymity?
I would go grocery shopping every day.
This contradiction is particularly revealing because grocery shopping isn't exactly a high-profile public activity that draws paparazzi attention or creates media frenzies. It's literally one of the most mundane, ordinary activities that adults do regularly without any fanfare. If she can handle girls' nights and date nights in restaurants where people are socializing, drinking, and potentially taking photos, why would walking through produce aisles suddenly become this insurmountable privacy challenge?
I miss grocery shopping so much, though I'm very much on Instacart.
The inconsistency suggests that either her claims about living openly and comfortably in public are dramatically exaggerated, or her complaints about missing normal activities are manufactured specifically to generate sympathy and maintain her victim narrative. Either way, the stories don't align with basic logic. The contradiction deepens exponentially when she expands on the travel theme. She describes missing the ability to travel spontaneously, to backpack through different places and go on road trips without all the complicated layers that apparently come with her current status. But this directly contradicts her earlier emphasis on living normally in their community, not trying to be incognito, and being comfortable with public recognition and interaction. If she can handle regular social outings in her local area without privacy concerns, why would traveling suddenly become this complex, layer-heavy ordeal that prevents spontaneity?
I would travel in a different way. I used to travel so much, and we can, but it has a lot of layers.
The logical disconnect is so obvious that it's almost insulting to the audience's intelligence. What makes this entire contradiction even more absurd is the context of who she's talking to and how she's presenting herself. She's sitting in a high-profile interview with a major business publication, being filmed for content that will be distributed globally, discussing her business ventures and public projects. This isn't someone who's genuinely seeking privacy or trying to avoid public attention. This is someone who's actively courting media coverage while simultaneously complaining about the loss of privacy that comes with media coverage. Now we need to discuss what might be the most questionable claims in this entire interview, and considering the competition, that's really saying something. The numbers Meghan throws around about her business success are so astronomical, and the timeline she describes is so impossibly compressed that it ventures into pure fantasy territory. Either she's engaging in the most dramatic exaggeration we've seen from a celebrity entrepreneur, or there are some seriously questionable methods being used to calculate these supposedly explosive sales figures.
And suddenly the conversation goes from a few thousand jars and lids to we need to do a purchase order of 1 million.
Let's break down exactly what Meghan is claiming happened with her lifestyle brand as ever, because the story she tells defies basic business logic. She establishes that when they started this year, they were having conversations about inventory in terms of a few thousand jars and lids. This suggests a very modest boutique operation, which makes perfect sense for a brand new lifestyle company launching its first product with no established customer base or market presence. But then she makes a claim that immediately raises red flags for anyone who understands retail. She states that her rose product sold out in exactly 44 minutes. Not approximately 45 minutes, not within an hour, but precisely 44 minutes. This level of specificity suggests either incredibly detailed real-time tracking systems or a number that's been carefully crafted for maximum dramatic impact rather than reflecting actual sales reality.
The rosé sold out also in less than an hour.
44 minutes. I was shocked.
For context, this would mean that a relatively unknown lifestyle brand, launching a seasonal product with presumably limited marketing budget and no established distribution network, somehow generated enough consumer demand to completely exhaust their inventory in under an hour. That kind of sellout speed is typically reserved for highly anticipated product drops from established mega brands with millions of devoted customers and massive marketing campaigns behind them. But here's where the story transitions from questionable to completely unbelievable. Meghan claims that for their second seasonal drop, they multiplied their inventory by 10 times, genuinely expecting this massive increase to last for weeks based on normal retail projections. Instead, she insists that this 10 times larger inventory sold out in just a couple of hours. Let's think about what this actually means in concrete terms. If they started with a few thousand units and then multiplied by 10, we're talking about tens of thousands of units moving in hours. For a luxury lifestyle product priced at premium levels, this represents millions of dollars in sales moving through their system in a single day. This would put as ever in the same category as viral consumer phenomena like limited edition sneaker drops or concert ticket releases, but without any of the visible cultural impact that typically accompanies that level of explosive demand.
Then we prepped for the second seasonal drop and 10x'd our inventory and thought for sure that would at least last for a couple weeks.
But wait, because it gets even more absurd. Meghan then delivers the absolute knockout punch to credibility by claiming that conversations have now shifted from discussing thousands of units to needing purchase orders for millions of units. She describes this as happening within just a few months of launching the business, representing a growth trajectory that would be extraordinary for any consumer brand, let alone a boutique lifestyle company selling specialty food products. This kind of scale jump, from startup inventory levels to million-unit purchase orders, typically takes successful consumer brands years to achieve, if they ever reach those numbers at all. We're talking about the kind of scaling that requires massive infrastructure investments, sophisticated supply chain management, enormous marketing budgets, and extensive retail distribution networks.
That sold out in a couple hours.
Yet Meghan describes this transformation as if it happened organically through word of mouth and social media buzz alone. The timeline and scale she's describing would require, as ever, to be processing more inventory and generating more sales than established lifestyle brands that have been building their customer bases for decades. This would put her little jam company in the same league as major consumer packaged goods companies with national distribution deals and $100 million marketing budgets. These numbers raise fundamental questions about verification, context, and basic business reality. Is she talking about actual completed sales to end consumers, Or is she including speculative wholesale orders that might never translate to actual revenue? Are these figures reflecting global demand projections, or are they based on limited regional testing that got extrapolated into fantasy numbers? And most importantly, where is the visible evidence of this supposed cultural phenomenon? When consumer brands experience the kind of explosive growth Meghan is describing, it typically generates significant media coverage, social media buzz, cultural conversations, and visible market impact. Viral product launches create hashtags, waiting lists, reseller markets, and widespread consumer awareness, yet as ever seems to have achieved unprecedented scaling without creating any of the typical indicators that accompany genuine viral success. The whole story becomes even more questionable when you consider the competitive landscape for luxury lifestyle products and the challenges of building sustainable demand for premium consumables in an oversaturated market. The way Meghan describes her relationship with Netflix reveals another fascinating layer of contradictions that completely exposes how her business narratives crumble under any kind of scrutiny. She's desperately trying to present herself as this independent, empowered entrepreneur while simultaneously being completely dependent on Netflix's corporate infrastructure, and she can't seem to maintain a consistent story about how much control and independence she actually possesses in this arrangement.
The Netflix of it all. You have a really unique relationship with them. How does it work?
Initially, Meghan presents Netflix as her collaborative business partner and primary investor for As Ever, making it sound like some kind of equal partnership where she maintains creative autonomy while Netflix provides financial backing and strategic support. She emphasizes repeatedly that Netflix graciously told her this is her baby and her brand, giving her final say on all creative decisions and business directions.
Creatively, they very graciously said, no, this is your baby and this is your brand. So all creative decisions and final decisions like that end up with me.
This paints a picture of an empowered entrepreneur who's leveraging Netflix's resources while maintaining her independence and creative vision. She wants us to believe that she's the one calling the shots, making the strategic decisions, and driving the direction of her business empire, while Netflix simply provides supportive infrastructure and funding. It sounds like the perfect partnership for someone who wants to maintain authenticity while having access to corporate resources. But as the conversation continues, the reality becomes much more complicated and significantly less empowering than her initial description suggested. She starts revealing that Netflix's involvement is actually through their existing consumer products division, and that their primary value comes from connecting her with suppliers and manufacturers that they're already comfortable working with through their other licensing deals and product partnerships.
CPG division might be newer for a lot of people to hear about.
This suggests a much more hands-on and controlling role from Netflix than her initial description implied. If Netflix is providing the suppliers, the manufacturing relationships, the consumer products expertise, the distribution networks, and the financial backing, in what meaningful sense is this really Meghan's independent business venture? It sounds more like she's licensing her name and image to Netflix's existing consumer products machine while pretending to be an autonomous entrepreneur. The contradiction becomes even more apparent when she discusses her decision-making process around funding and partnerships. She admits that her original plan was to build out her own team and execute everything on her own terms, which would have given her more control over the business direction and potentially much more financial upside from any success.
Do you have any backers other than Netflix?
But then Netflix made what she calls a compelling sell, convincing her to partner with them instead of pursuing independent funding and development. This raises fundamental questions about how much independence and control she actually has in this arrangement. If she originally wanted to do everything on her own terms but was persuaded to accept Netflix's corporate structure instead, how much of her creative autonomy is real versus cosmetic? The timing of this interview makes these contradictions even more devastating to her credibility. Just days after she gave these confident statements about their wonderful partnership, Netflix's support, and her creative control, major entertainment industry publications reported that their deal had been significantly restructured and downgraded.
Oh, Netflix is my partner and investor.
Instead of the exclusive lucrative arrangement she spent the interview describing, they reportedly signed a much less valuable first-look deal that's similar to what Netflix offers to much less prominent content creators. This new structure allows Harry and Meghan to shop their projects to other networks and streaming services if Netflix decides to pass, which suggests much less commitment and investment from Netflix than Meghan's interview implied. This means that either Meghan wasn't being completely honest about the strength and security of their Netflix relationship during this interview, or the situation changed dramatically in just a matter of days after she recorded these statements. Either scenario raises serious questions about her credibility and business acumen. If she knew the restructuring was coming, then her confident descriptions of Netflix's support and their collaborative partnership were deliberately misleading. If she didn't know the restructuring was coming, then her understanding of her own business relationships is questionable, and her claims about having final creative control seem naive at best. One of the most glaring contradictions in Meghan's entire public narrative involves her childhood financial situation, and it's particularly revealing because these inconsistencies have persisted across multiple interviews and public appearances over the years. She's desperately trying to craft this relatable story about growing up with financial struggles and humble beginnings, but the specific details she casually provides don't add up to the picture of economic hardship she's trying to paint for public consumption. Meghan consistently describes herself as someone who grew up in a household where money was tight, where her family had to clip coupons and hunt for bargains on sale racks just to make ends meet. She emphasizes how hard her family had to work for every dollar, and how this supposedly instilled in her a deep appreciation for the value of money and hard work. She talks about being paycheck to paycheck as an auditioning actor in Los Angeles, suggesting that financial insecurity and economic anxiety have been constant themes throughout her life story.
Actor, you are paycheck to paycheck, so you're very mindful about how you spend. But I grew up clipping coupons.
But then she starts dropping casual details that completely contradict this carefully constructed narrative of financial hardship and working-class struggle. She describes how in high school, her primary financial goal was saving up money from her after-school job to buy designer clothing, specifically a BB shirt, and how getting one with rhinestones would mean she'd really made it in terms of teenage social status. Now, this might seem like a minor detail that doesn't deserve much analysis, but it actually reveals everything about the authenticity of her financial background claims. Having an after-school job at 13 certainly suggests some level of financial necessity, which initially aligns with her struggling family narrative and seems to support her claims about learning the value of hard work early in life.
I know where I came from. I remember being in high school and having my after-school job.
But here's where the logic falls apart completely. BB was never a budget brand, and rhinestone BB shirts were definitely luxury items for teenagers in the 90s and early 2000s. We're talking about clothing that cost more than many adults spent on their entire monthly wardrobe.
And all I wanted to do was save up to buy a shirt that said BB.
Most families genuinely struggling financially, families that are clipping coupons and shopping clearance racks out of necessity rather than choice, wouldn't have teenagers saving up discretionary income from part-time jobs to purchase designer clothing items. In families with genuine financial constraints, teenage earnings typically go toward contributing to household expenses, saving for basic necessities, or covering educational costs. They don't go toward purchasing luxury fashion items that serve no purpose other than displaying social status and brand affinity. The ability to save up after-school job money for designer purchases suggests a level of family financial stability that directly contradicts the economic hardship narrative she's promoting. The contradiction becomes even more obvious when you consider her educational background and the financial implications of her academic path. Meghan attended Northwestern University, which has always been an expensive private institution with tuition costs that put it out of reach for most middle-class families, let alone families struggling with the kind of financial constraints she describes. Even with financial aid, scholarships, or other assistance programs, attending Northwestern suggests access to either significant family financial resources or educational opportunities that typically aren't available to students from genuinely economically disadvantaged backgrounds. The combination of expensive private university education and teenage designer clothing purchases paints a picture of comfortable middle-class or upper-middle-class upbringing, rather than the financial struggles she consistently emphasizes.
My first job was when I was 13 at a frozen yogurt shop called Humphrey Yogurt.
Furthermore, her description of her great childhood in Los Angeles, complete with opportunities to engage in social activism projects and letter-writing campaigns, suggests a level of privilege, stability, and educational enrichment that contradicts the narrative of constant financial anxiety and economic struggle.
I've had a lot of jobs over the years.
Families genuinely living paycheck to paycheck typically don't have children with the time, resources, and parental support necessary to engage in sophisticated social activism projects that require research, writing skills, and media outreach. The inconsistency extends to her acting career trajectory as well. She describes being paycheck to paycheck as an auditioning actor, but she was somehow able to maintain herself in Los Angeles for years while pursuing acting work, before eventually landing a starring role on a major network television series.
When you work really hard, you value what you've earned.
This suggests either substantial family financial support or some other source of economic stability that completely contradicts her narrative of constant financial insecurity and struggle. Here's a contradiction that's particularly fascinating because it reveals how Meghan tries to rewrite her own professional history to fit her current victim narrative. She wants us to believe that wearing pantyhose as part of royal protocol was this completely foreign, shocking experience that felt totally inauthentic to her core identity. But this claim falls apart spectacularly when you consider her actual professional background and the requirements of her television career that lasted 7 full years. Meghan describes her reaction to royal dress codes with what appears to be genuine bewilderment and culture shock. She emphasizes how wearing nude pantyhose felt completely unnatural and restrictive, joking that she hadn't encountered pantyhose since movies in the 80s when they came packaged in those little plastic eggs. She presents this as compelling evidence of how the oppressive royal protocols forced her to be inauthentic, requiring her to dress in ways that felt totally foreign to her personal style and individual expression.
I had to wear nude pantyhose all the time. It was, let's be honest, that was not very myself.
The fundamental problem with this entire story is that Meghan spent 7 years as a professional actress on Suits, a high-end legal drama that was specifically designed to portray sophisticated professional environments authentically. Anyone who's worked in television production, particularly on shows that focus on corporate or legal settings, knows that costume departments have extremely strict requirements for professional attire, and hosiery or pantyhose is absolutely standard protocol for women wearing business clothing on camera.
I hadn't seen pantyhose since movies in the 80s, when they came in the little egg.
Rachel Zane, Meghan's character on Suits, was a paralegal who later became a law student, and she wore professional business attire in virtually every single episode throughout the show's run. The costume department would have required specific undergarments, including hosiery, to achieve the polished professional look that the show was trying to project. Television costume departments are notorious for their obsessive attention to detail, especially for shows that are attempting to portray professional environments with authenticity and credibility.
That felt a little bit inauthentic, but that's a silly example. But
The idea that Meghan could spend 7 years filming a show that required professional wardrobe without ever encountering pantyhose or hosiery requirements is simply not credible to anyone who understands how television production works. Costume supervisors on professional sets maintain detailed continuity requirements, and they absolutely would have specified appropriate undergarments for maintaining consistent character appearance across multiple seasons of filming. Furthermore, Meghan's career involved countless industry events, red carpet appearances, award shows, promotional interviews, and professional meetings throughout her acting years. The entertainment industry has its own sophisticated set of formal dress expectations, and anyone working at Meghan's level of visibility would have been familiar with various professional styling requirements that go well beyond basic clothing choices. The contradiction becomes even more obvious when you consider that Meghan has consistently presented herself as someone who was extremely conscious about fashion choices and personal styling throughout her entire adult career. She maintained a lifestyle blog called The Tig for several years, where she regularly discussed fashion decisions, styling tips, professional wardrobe choices, and personal presentation strategies.
of course, had different chapters in my life. But right now, no, I don't feel that I need to prove anything.
Someone who was that deeply engaged with fashion, professional presentation, and styling advice wouldn't be genuinely shocked or surprised by basic wardrobe requirements like hosiery that are standard in most professional environments. This isn't some obscure or unusual protocol that only exists in royal circles. This is basic professional attire that millions of working women deal with regularly in corporate, legal, medical, and entertainment industries. But this contradiction isn't really about pantyhose at all, and that's what makes it so revealing about Meghan's approach to constructing her public narrative. She's using this trivial wardrobe requirement as a symbol of much larger claims about royal protocol being restrictive, oppressive, and fundamentally incompatible with her authentic self-expression and personal freedom. She's crafting a narrative where she was this free-spirited, authentic California girl who was suddenly forced into artificial constraints by an archaic institution, but her professional background suggests she was already extremely familiar with the kind of formal presentation requirements and protocol expectations that come with any high-profile professional position. The entire story falls apart when you realize that royal dress codes aren't significantly more restrictive than the styling requirements she would have encountered throughout her entertainment career, her blog writing, her public appearances, and her professional networking within the Hollywood industry. She's retroactively portraying normal professional expectations as some kind of shocking cultural oppression to support her broader victim narrative about royal life.
And so if I'm part of an SEO and that gets them more clickbait, then yes, they're incentivized to churn out as many stories.
The final contradiction might be the most psychologically revealing of all, because it shows how Meghan tries to execute an impossible balancing act when it comes to media attention and public discourse. She desperately wants us to believe that she's completely disconnected from negative coverage and lives in blissful ignorance of what's being said about her, while simultaneously demonstrating encyclopedic knowledge of specific criticisms, media narratives, and the intricate economic mechanisms behind celebrity coverage. Meghan makes a huge production of explaining how she protects her mental health and authentic self by simply refusing to look at negative coverage about herself. She describes having developed healthy boundaries around media consumption, emphasizing that she's learned to compartmentalize and separate her real identity from the manufactured caricature that gets created by clickbait culture for profit and engagement.
That's why I don't look at it. It would be very hard to see anything about yourself that isn't true.
This sounds like someone who's developed sophisticated psychological defense mechanisms and maintains genuine emotional distance from the media ecosystem that surrounds celebrity culture. She presents herself as someone who's risen above the noise, who doesn't engage with negative commentary, and who's found peace through deliberate disconnection from toxic online discourse. But throughout this entire interview, she demonstrates intimate, detailed knowledge of specific criticisms and media narratives that directly contradict her claims about not consuming coverage about herself. She knows about reviews of her Netflix show, both positive and negative. She understands the economic incentives behind clickbait coverage with the expertise of someone who studied digital media economics. She can articulate sophisticated explanations about how SEO algorithms work, how affiliate marketing generates revenue from celebrity coverage, and how financial incentives drive negative story production.
But equally, it's not me that they're talking about. It's some caricature they've had to create to get clicks.
This isn't the knowledge base of someone who's disconnected from media coverage about themselves. This is the expertise of someone who's deeply plugged into every conversation, every criticism, every narrative development, and every economic mechanism that drives celebrity coverage. You don't develop this level of understanding about clickbait economics and SEO strategy without extensive exposure to exactly the kind of media discourse she claims to avoid. The contradiction becomes most obvious when she references specific criticisms that supposedly she's never encountered. When the interviewer mentions that some people view her show as glorifying homemaking or promoting trad wife culture, she responds with apparent surprise, claiming she hadn't heard that particular criticism before.
But there's this take that you're glorifying homemaking or glorifying trad wives.
Oh, really?
But her response immediately demonstrates that she's actually quite familiar with this line of critique, because she has a detailed, nuanced, well-thought-out response ready to deploy instantly. You don't spontaneously generate sophisticated rebuttals to criticisms you've never encountered before. Her response reveals someone who's not only familiar with this specific criticism, but has spent considerable time thinking about how to address it strategically. Furthermore, she admits throughout the interview that while she doesn't look at negative coverage directly, she's acutely aware that her friends, family members, and social circle have to read these stories. She mentions specifically that her children will eventually see magazines with false information, and that there's gossip among other parents in their community about coverage. This suggests she's getting filtered information about media coverage through her personal network, which means she's still very much plugged into the conversation about herself, just through intermediary sources rather than direct consumption. You can't simultaneously be protecting yourself from seeing false stories while also knowing intimate details about what those false stories contain and understanding their broader impact on your reputation and business interests.
That feels odd to me.
Yeah, how do you respond to that?
That feels odd to me. I mean, I hadn't heard that.
The most telling moment comes when she acknowledges that it would be very hard to see anything about yourself that isn't true, while simultaneously demonstrating detailed knowledge of untrue things that have apparently been written about her. She can't logically know that false stories exist and understand their specific content and impact without having been exposed to that content through some mechanism. This contradiction reveals someone who's trying to appear above the fray and emotionally unaffected by criticism while being completely consumed with managing, understanding, and responding to every aspect of her media coverage and public perception. She wants the sympathy that comes with being a victim of unfair coverage while also demonstrating the strategic media literacy that comes from obsessive attention to that same coverage. And there you have it, 7 absolutely devastating moments where Meghan Markle's carefully constructed narrative completely imploded in spectacular fashion. What we just witnessed wasn't just a few innocent slip-ups or minor inconsistencies. This was a full-scale demolition of credibility, delivered with the kind of confidence that only comes from someone who genuinely believes their own mythology. Each contradiction we dissected reveals a fundamental problem with how modern celebrities construct their public personas. When you're trying to be everything to everyone, when you're crafting different versions of your story for different audiences, eventually those stories start crashing into each other like cars in a demolition derby. And that's exactly what happened in this Bloomberg interview. The technology contradiction showed us someone trying to appear authentic and relatable while running a sophisticated digital empire. The privacy paradox exposed someone who wants sympathy for restrictions while living completely openly. Those astronomical business claims either represent the most explosive growth in lifestyle brand history, or they're the kind of exaggerations that make you question everything else someone says about their success. The Netflix partnership confusion revealed someone trying to appear independent while being completely dependent on corporate infrastructure. The financial background contradictions demonstrated how childhood narratives get manufactured to support current branding needs. The royal protocol amnesia was perhaps the most insulting to our intelligence, asking us to believe that a television actress had never encountered professional wardrobe requirements, and that media awareness contradiction, That was the cherry on top of this entire disaster, showing someone who claims to be disconnected from coverage while demonstrating encyclopedic knowledge of every criticism and media narrative about them. But here's what makes this whole thing even more entertaining. Meghan delivered every single one of these contradictions with absolute conviction, as if she genuinely believed that no one would notice the logical gaps in her stories. The audacity is almost admirable in its completeness. What this interview really exposed wasn't just 7 specific contradictions. It revealed the exhausting mental gymnastics required to maintain multiple versions of your life story, and how those gymnastic routines eventually become impossible to sustain when you're speaking for 90 minutes straight to someone who's actually paying attention. The real question now is whether anyone will still take her seriously after watching her credibility crumble in real time. Because once you've seen someone contradict themselves this thoroughly, this confidently, and this repeatedly, it becomes pretty hard to trust anything else they tell you. Which contradiction shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let us know if you caught any other inconsistencies we missed. Smash that like button if you want to see more celebrity interviews dissected for contradictions. Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell because we're just getting started with these deep dives into the stories celebrities tell about themselves. And stick around because the next video is already loaded and ready to blow your mind with even more unbelievable celebrity contradictions that will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about your favorite stars.